Welcome to the deep dive. You know, for ages, when high blood pressure comes up, the first thing you hear is,
Cut down on salt. Always.
exactly. But the sources you sent over, they point to some, well, really fascinating research. Suggests maybe we're missing something
Yeah. Focusing maybe too much on what to take out.
instead of what we should perhaps add in.
That's right. The study we're digging into today, it really spotlights a mineral we probably don't chat about enough, potassium.
Right.
And it highlights how just eating more everyday things like bananas and broccoli
Simple stuff.
could actually be a pretty effective way to manage blood pressure. Surprisingly so, maybe.
Okay, so that's our goal here for you listening. Can this simple dietary shift, eating more of these foods, be a real game changer for heart health?
Was one of those aha moments, potentially.
Could it be that straightforward?
Hmm.
And to help us unpack all this really interesting science, we've got our expert right here.
It's great to be here. I think this research, it offers a really quite empowering message for people. Well, for anyone looking to manage their blood pressure using diet, it gives another angle, another tool.
Okay, let's dive in then. High blood pressure. Feels like everyone knows someone who's dealing with it, right?
Unfortunately, yeah, that's pretty much the reality. The study you shared mentions it affects more than 3 in 10 adults.
3 in 10. That is a huge number.
It really is a significant chunk of the population.
And we should be clear, this isn't just like a minor health thing.
Oh, absolutely not.
It can lead to some really serious problems down the road.
Definitely. High blood pressure is the leading cause of coronary heart disease and stroke, major health events.
Right, the big ones.
But even beyond that, it can seriously bump up the risk for chronic kidney disease, heart failure, even irregular heartbeats.
And dementia, I saw that mentioned.
Yes, and potentially contribute to cognitive decline like dementia. It's, a systemic problem, wide-ranging effects.
Which circles us back to that standard advice.
Eat less salt, sodium reduction.
It's been the mantra for, what, decades?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And look, reducing sodium can be beneficial for some people, no doubt.
Yeah.
But what's really compelling about this new research is the main finding. It suggests that focusing on the ratio
Okay.
of dietary potassium to sodium intake, that might actually be more effective
More effective than just cutting salt.
than just solely focusing on cutting sodium, yes. For lowering blood pressure, think balance, not just restriction.
So bringing more potassium in could be a more powerful move for many people.
That's what this research points towards, yes.
Yeah.
A potentially bigger impact.
And suddenly, bananas and broccoli are the heroes.
Well, they're certainly highlighted.
As key potassium sources in the study, it almost sounds too simple, doesn't it?
They are definitely good, accessible examples. And Dr. Anita Layton, one of the researchers, she's quoted saying
What'd she say?
that adding more potassium-rich foods, like those bananas or broccoli, might actually have a greater positive impact on blood pressure than just cutting sodium.
Wow, okay. That really reframes things.
It suggests a different strategy, doesn't it?
Mm.
A shift in thinking.
Okay, let's talk about potassium and sodium then. We hear about them, electrolytes. Why are they so fundamental?
Right. So both are electrolytes. Basically, minerals that carry an electrical charge when they're dissolved in, body fluids like blood.
An electrical charge, okay.
And this electrical signaling is absolutely vital. It's key for something called the sodium-potassium pump,
Heard that.
which helps regulate how cells work, fluid balance, directly impacting blood pressure.
So they help send signals for muscles and things.
Exactly. Signals for muscle contractions, super important for your heart pumping, obviously.
Hmm.
And they also manage the amount of water in your body.
Fluid balance, got it. Like the body's internal wiring for really crucial jobs.
You could think of it that way, yeah. Very important stuff.
Now, the study also brings in this evolutionary perspective, which I found fascinating.
Yes. This part is really interesting. Melissa Stott, she's the lead author.
What did she find?
She points out that early human diets, heavy on fruits and vegetables, were naturally really high in potassium
And low in sodium, presumably.
and pretty low in sodium, relatively speaking, compared to today.
So are the sources suggesting that maybe our modern diets are just so far off from what we evolved with
That's kind of the core idea, yeah.
that our bodies are sort of struggling to cope?
Precisely. Our internal systems, the ones that regulate blood pressure, they might have evolved to work best with that high potassium, lower sodium mix.
Which is almost the complete opposite of many modern diets.
Exactly right. Think about typical Western diets,
Mm.
often high in sodium, loads of processed foods,
And maybe not enough fresh stuff.
and relatively low in potassium because maybe we're not eating as many fruits and vegetables as we could or as our ancestors did.
So this big dietary shift.
The researchers suggest this massive shift could be a major reason why high blood pressure is, well, so much more common now.
In industrialized societies, anyway.
Yeah, compared to some isolated populations who still eat, more traditional diets.
It's like our bodies are tuned for one kind of fuel mix, and we're giving them something totally different.
That's a good analogy, actually.
Okay, so to really get a handle on this relationship, the Canadian team, they didn't just observe people, right? They used a model.
They did. They developed a mathematical model. It's a way to simulate and understand how this potassium to sodium ratio impacts the body's systems more precisely.
A mathematical model. How does that work?
Well, it lets them sort of quantify the effect, see how much difference a certain change in that ratio might make to blood pressure. It's harder to isolate that purely in human trials.
So it builds on what we already knew.
Exactly. It builds on previous research that already showed, yeah, increasing potassium helps blood pressure. This model just lets them explore the dynamics in more detail.
Like a virtual lab for electrolytes?
Sort of, yeah. It allows for quick, relatively cheap, and ethical ways to test hypotheses about how different factors interact in the body.
That's really clever. Now, speaking of different factors, the study also found something pretty significant about differences between men and women.
Yes, this is a really crucial finding, I think, a key nuance.
What did they find there?
So the research, it was published in the American Journal of Physiology, it found that, generally speaking, men tend to develop high blood pressure more easily
More easily than women.
than premenopausal women, specifically. That was the comparison group.
Okay, so that's like a baseline difference. Interesting.
Yeah. But here's the really interesting part related to this topic.
Go on.
The study also indicated that men seem to be more likely to have a positive response,
A bigger improvement.
a bigger improvement in their blood pressure when they increase that potassium to sodium ratio in their diet.
Really? So focusing on potassium might be particularly beneficial for men.
That's what the results suggest, yes. That specific dietary strategy might pack more punch for men, you could say.
Wow. Okay, so for any men listening, this could be especially relevant information.
It could be. It highlights how, our biology isn't uniform.
We respond differently to the same things.
Exactly. Nutrition is rarely, if ever, a one-size-fits-all situation.
Right. Okay, so let's try and wrap this up for everyone listening. What's the main takeaway message from this deep dive based on the research you shared?
I think the core message is really about shifting perspective. Instead of only thinking about cutting sodium,
Which has been the focus for so long.
we should maybe be thinking more actively about increasing our intake of potassium-rich foods. It's about the balance.
The ratio.
That potassium to sodium ratio seems critical. And for many people, boosting potassium might be the more effective strategy for managing blood pressure.
Focusing on the add rather than just the subtract.
Precisely. And remembering that interesting detail about sex differences, too.
Yeah, that men might see an even greater benefit from focusing on that potassium balance.
Exactly. It just reinforces how complex our bodies are and how dietary changes can play out differently for different people.
So a final thought maybe for you listening, take a look at your own diet. Are you
Yeah.
mostly focused on cutting things out, like salt?
Or are you also thinking about what you're putting in? Specifically, those potassium-rich foods.
Could that simple shift in balance, adding more potassium, make a real difference to your health?
And remember, it's not just bananas and broccoli, great as they are.
Loads of options out there.
Oh, yeah. Leafy greens, sweet potatoes, avocados, beans, lentils. So many fruits and vegetables are packed with potassium. Worth exploring.
Definitely something to chew on, maybe literally, as you think about your next meal.